February 1958. Billie Holiday called Bumpy Johnson at 2 in the morning, crying. Her manager had stolen $470,000 and put her name on a list with 23 dead artists. Bumpy had 6 hours before the man disappeared forever. What did Bumpy do that made grown men break down without him ever throwing a single punch to understand how it all led here? We go back to where it truly began. The basement room on 147th Street was silent except for the sound of water dripping from a pipe somewhere in the darkness. The kind of silence that made men confess without being asked. The kind that crawled under your skin and made you remember every wrong thing you'd ever done. Marcus Webb sat in a wooden chair in the center of the room, hands tied behind his back, sweat running down his face despite the February cold seeping through the walls. He'd been sitting there for 43 minutes. Nobody had touched him. Nobody had threatened him. Nobody had said a single word. That was the problem. Bumpy Johnson sat across from him, perfectly still. A glass of whiskey untouched on the small table beside his chair. Not drinking. Not smoking. Not moving. Just watching Marcus with eyes that seemed to see straight through flesh and bone into the ugly truth underneath. Illinois Gordon stood by the door, arms crossed, face expressionless. 2 other men, whose names Marcus didn't know and didn't want to know, stood in the shadows, waiting. Marcus had worked for Bumpy Johnson for 6 years. He knew how this went. The silence wasn't mercy. It was method. Bumpy understood something most men didn't. Fear wasn't about what you did to someone. It was about what you let them imagine you might do. And Marcus's imagination was running wild. The phone rang. The sound cut through the silence like a gunshot. Everyone froze. Illinois' hand moved instinctively toward his jacket. The 2 men in the shadows straightened. Even Marcus, tied to his chair, felt his body go rigid. Bumpy didn't move. He just looked at the phone on the wall, an old rotary model that had been ringing in this basement for 20 years. Then he looked at his watch. 2:17 in the morning. A phone call at 2 in the morning only means 2 things, Bumpy said, his voice calm, measured, like he was discussing the weather. Someone's dead, or someone's about to be. He stood slowly, walked to the phone. Let it ring one more time. The sound echoed in the concrete room. Then he picked up the receiver. Yes. 5 seconds. That's all it took. Bumpy's face, which had been composed, controlled, unreadable, changed, not dramatically. Bumpy Johnson didn't do drama. But if you knew him, if you'd watched him for years like Illinois had, you saw it, the slight tightening around his eyes, the way his jaw shifted, the way his free hand, which had been relaxed at his side, slowly closed into a fist. Billie. 1 word, just her name. But the way Bumpy said it, everyone in the room understood. This wasn't business anymore. This was personal. And personal meant someone was going to pay a price that couldn't be calculated in dollars or territory or power. This was war. Illinois pushed off from the wall, suddenly alert. The 2 men in the shadows moved closer, waiting for orders. Even Marcus, terrified as he was, recognized the shift in the room's energy. Bumpy listened for another 30 seconds, his expression growing darker with each passing moment. Then he spoke, his voice dropping to something quiet and deadly. Stay where you are. Don't move. Don't answer the door for anyone. I'm coming. He hung up the phone. The silence that followed was somehow worse than before. Bumpy stood there, hand still on the receiver, his mind already 3 steps ahead, already calculating, already planning. Then he turned to Illinois. Get the car. Now. But before Illinois could move, Bumpy's eyes went distant, not unfocused. focused on something far away, something 17 years in the past. What most people didn't know, what the history books would never record, was that Billie Holiday wasn't just another singer Bumpy Johnson protected. She was family, the daughter he'd never had, the one pure thing in a life built on violence and survival. It started in 1941. Billie was 19 years old, singing in a dive bar on Lenox Avenue for tips and watered-down drinks. She had the voice even then, raw, unpolished, but undeniable. The kind of voice that made you stop whatever you were doing and listen. Bumpy had been at the bar that night on other business, collecting from the owner who owed 3 weeks' protection money. But when Billie started singing Strange Fruit, everything else stopped mattering. After the set, 3 men cornered her in the alley behind the bar, drunk, dangerous, thinking a young black girl singing in a dive was there for more than just music. Bumpy heard her scream. What happened next wasn't pretty, but it was necessary. 2 of the men ended up in the hospital. The 3rd ended up in the East River, and Billie ended up in Bumpy's car. Shaking, crying, trying to understand what she'd just witnessed. But that wasn't the whole story. That wasn't the secret that only 3 people knew. The 3 men weren't random drunks. They worked for Vincent Mangano, a trafficker who specialized in shipping young women to Havana. Clubs down there paid premium prices for American girls, especially black girls with talent. Billie had been marked, targeted. That night in the alley wasn't assault. It was acquisition. Bumpy didn't just save Billie from 3 men. He saved her from disappearing into a nightmare she'd never escape. The next morning, Vincent Mangano's body was found in a warehouse in Red Hook, single shot to the head. His second-in-command was found in a car trunk in Queens. The trafficking operation collapsed within a week. Billie never sang in dive bars again. Within 6 months, she was playing the Apollo. Within 2 years, she was recording with Columbia Records. Within 5, she was the most famous voice in jazz. And through it all, Bumpy watched over her. Not as a manager, not as a business partner, as family. She called him Uncle Bumpy. He called her Lady Day. And the secret of what really happened that night in 1941, the secret of who Vincent Mangano really was and why he died, that stayed buried. 3 people knew: Bumpy, Billie, and Thomas Reed. Bumpy's secretary and confidant for 12 years. Thomas Reed, who was currently sitting in an apartment in the Bronx, counting $50,000 he'd been paid 3 days ago by a man named John Levy. Bumpy's eyes came back into focus. Illinois was watching him, waiting. "Boss, on change of plans," Bumpy said quietly. "Marcus stays here with Theo and James. Nobody touches him. Nobody talks to him. He just sits there and thinks about his choices." Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Maybe he'd survive this after all. "We're going to make 4 stops before we deal with Levy," Bumpy continued, already putting on his coat. "First stop is Jimmy the Snake's record shop. He's been keeping files for me." Illinois nodded, grabbing his own jacket. "What kind of files?" "The kind that show John Levy isn't working alone." The revelation had come 2 weeks earlier. Bumpy had been tracking Levy for 18 months, documenting every dollar he stole from Billie, every contract clause he manipulated, every lie he told. Standard protection work. Keep the evidence. Wait for the right moment. Then move. But then one of Bumpy's people, a coat check girl at the Cotton Club, overheard something that changed everything. Levy had been drinking with 6 other men. Managers, booking agents, club owners. They were laughing about a singer who'd just died in a car accident in Philadelphia. 26 years old. Rising star. Dead 3 weeks after her manager sold her contract to a new agency. "That's 23, one of them had said, raising his glass. "Who's next?" 23. The number stuck in Bumpy's mind. He'd started digging. Quietly. Carefully. What he found made his blood run cold. Over the past 8 years, 23 black artists had died or disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Car accidents, drug overdoses, sudden illnesses. Each one had recently switched managers or signed new contracts. Each one had been making significant money right before they died. Each one had life insurance policies that paid out to their management companies. It wasn't coincidence. It was systematic. It was organized. It was murder disguised as the tragic cost of fame. And John Levy was part of it. One of 7 men running what Bumpy had started calling the syndicate. They targeted talented black artists, took control of their careers, bled them dry financially, then arranged accidents when the artists became more valuable dead than alive. Billie Holiday was number 24. The pattern was clear once Bumpy knew what to look for. Levy had isolated Billie from her friends, taken control of her finances, gotten her dependent on substances he supplied, destroyed her confidence, made her believe she was worthless without him. Now he was in the final phase. The paperwork Bumpy's lawyer had obtained showed that Levy had taken out a life insurance policy on Billie 6 months ago. $500,000. Beneficiary Levy Management, LLC. The plan was simple. Drain her accounts, sell her contract to another member of the syndicate, stage an accident, collect the insurance, move on to the next victim. Except Bumpy had found out. And tonight, something had gone wrong in Levy's carefully constructed plan. The car ride to Jimmy's record shop took 12 minutes. Illinois drove in silence, knowing better than to ask questions when Bumpy was thinking. And Bumpy was thinking hard. Because there was another problem. A bigger problem. 3 days ago, FB agent Robert Fisher had approached Bumpy outside a diner in Midtown. Fisher was part of a task force investigating organized crime in Harlem. They'd been watching Bumpy for months, waiting for him to make a mistake big enough to justify an arrest. "We know you're planning something, Johnson," Fisher had said, lighting a cigarette. "We don't know what, but we're watching. And if you step out of line, if you so much as jaywalk in the next month, we're coming down on you with everything we've got." It was a warning, a clear one. The FBI was waiting for Bumpy to commit an act of violence so they could finally put him away, which meant Bumpy couldn't touch Levy, couldn't threaten him, couldn't make him disappear. Not without ending up in federal prison for the rest of his life. He had to be smarter than that. Jimmy the Snake's record shop was dark when they arrived. Illinois knocked 3 times, paused, knocked twice more. A signal. 30 seconds later, Jimmy opened the door, a thin man in his 60s with nervous eyes and quick hands. "Mr. Johnson, I got what you asked for." Jimmy led them to the back room, past shelves of jazz records and blues albums, to a safe hidden behind a framed poster of Duke Ellington. He opened it, pulled out a manila folder 3 inches thick. "Everything's in here. Took me 6 months to compile. Names, dates, financial records, insurance policies. Even got testimony from 2 of the syndicate members who got cold feet." Bumpy opened the folder. Page after page of evidence. Proof of fraud. Proof of conspiracy. Proof of murder. "This goes to the FBI. All 7 of them go down," Jimmy said. 20 to life. Minimum. It's not going to the FBI," Bumpy said quietly. Still reading. "Not yet." Illinois raised an eyebrow. "Boss, the FBI wants me in prison. If I hand them this, they'll take it, use it, and then find a way to implicate me in the investigation. Say I was involved. Say I knew and didn't report it." Bumpy closed the folder. "We're not giving this to the FBI. We're giving it to someone they can't ignore." "Who?" "The one man in New York City who hates corruption more than he hates me. District Attorney Harold Morrison. Black, ambitious, honest to a fault. He'd been trying to clean up the city's underbelly for 5 years, and he'd made more enemies than friends doing it. Morrison didn't care about Bumpy Johnson's empire. He cared about justice. And if Bumpy could prove that 7 white men were systematically murdering black artists, Morrison would prosecute with everything he had. But first, Bumpy needed to keep Billie alive through the night. The second stop was a telephone booth on 135th Street. Bumpy stepped inside, dropped a nickel, dialed a number he'd memorized 15 years ago. A woman's voice answered on the third ring. Law offices of Margaret Chen. It's Bumpy. I need her. Now. 60 seconds later, Margaret Chen herself came on the line. The only Chinese-American woman practicing law in New York State. She'd started as a secretary, passed the bar on her own, and now handled cases nobody else would touch. Bumpy, it's 2:30 in the morning. I need an emergency injunction. Manager trying to enforce a fraudulent contract. Client is in immediate danger. Who's the client? Billie Holiday. Silence on the other end. Then, I'll have the papers ready in 3 hours. Where do you want them served? The Woodside Hotel, room 412. And Margaret. Make sure the court clerk is someone who can't be bought. Already know who to call. Bumpy hung up. 2 pieces in place. The evidence. The legal protection. Now he needed the third piece. The leverage. Illinois drove them to a warehouse in Brooklyn. 3:15 in the morning. The city was dead quiet. But inside the warehouse, lights were on. A poker game. 5 men around a table, smoking cigars, drinking expensive scotch. One of them was Vincent Marconi, lieutenant in the Genovese crime family. He looked up when Bumpy and Illinois walked in. Didn't seem surprised. Bumpy, heard you might be coming around. Need information. Vincent. Information costs. I'm aware. Bumpy pulled out a chair. Sat down. John Levy. What do you know? Vincent exchanged glances with the other men at the table. Levy's been running debts with some of our associates. Gambling mostly. Owes about 200 grand across 4 books. Who holds the markers? Mostly Sal Tortino's operation. Why? Because Levy's about to run. 6 o'clock flight to Havana. If he gets on that plane, Sal never sees his money. Vincent leaned back, interested now. That's so. And if Sal wants his money, he needs to make sure Levy doesn't leave New York, not until certain debts are settled. What kind of debts? The kind owed to Billie Holiday, the kind that total about $470,000. Vincent whistled low. Levy stole that much from Lady Day. Stole it, hid it, was planning to disappear with it. Bumpy stood up. You call Sal. You tell him if he wants his 200 grand. He helps me get Billie's money back first. Levy pays everyone, or Levy pays no one. And if I don't make that call, Bumpy's expression didn't change. Then Levy gets on that plane. Sal loses 200,000, and everyone knows it was because Vincent Marconi couldn't make a simple phone call. The threat was subtle but clear. Vincent would look weak, unreliable, in their world. That was a death sentence. I'll make the call, Vincent said finally. 3 pieces in place. Evidence, legal protection, financial pressure. But Bumpy still had one more stop to make before sunrise. The most important one. They drove back to Harlem, to an apartment building on Edgecombe Avenue. Bumpy walked up 3 flights of stairs, knocked on a door marked 3C. The door opened. Thomas Reed stood there in his bathrobe, his face going pale when he saw Bumpy. Mr. Johnson. I didn't expect. I know, Thomas. Bumpy walked past him into the apartment. Illinois followed, closing the door behind them. The apartment was modest, clean, exactly what you'd expect from a secretary who'd worked for the same man for 12 years. Except for one thing. On the kitchen table, still in its bank envelope, was $50,000 in cash. Thomas saw Bumpy looking at it, saw the recognition in his eyes, saw his entire life collapse in real time. "Mr. Johnson, I can explain." "Sit down, Thomas." Thomas sat. His hands were shaking. Bumpy pulled out a chair across from him. Didn't sit, just stood there, looking down at the man who'd been his right hand for over a decade. "How long have you been feeding information to Levy?" 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks. I swear." "What did you tell him?" Thomas's voice cracked. "About you and Miss Holiday. About what happened in 1941. About Mangano. The one secret that could destroy everything. The one piece of information that gave Levy leverage over both Bumpy and Billy. If word got out that Bumpy Johnson had killed Vincent Mangano to protect a teenager, the FBI would have motive for a 17-year-old murder. If Billy's name got attached to it, her career would be over, her reputation destroyed. Levy had bought that information for $50,000, and he'd planned to use it to keep both Bumpy and Billy silent while he executed his final plan. "Why?" Bumpy asked quietly. "My daughter. She needs surgery. The doctors want $30,000 up front. I didn't have it. Levy approached me. He knew I worked for you. He offered the money if I just told him about your relationship with Miss Holiday. I didn't know what he was planning. I swear, I didn't know." Bumpy was silent for a long moment. Illinois stood by the door, waiting to see how this would play out. Finally, Bumpy spoke. "You're going to live, Thomas." Thomas looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "You're going to live," Bumpy repeated, "because I need you to see what happens when you betray family. I need you to watch what I do to Levy. I need you to carry that weight for the rest of your life." He pulled out a business card, wrote a number on the back. "That's my personal doctor. He'll arrange your daughter's surgery. No cost." Thomas started crying. "But you don't work for me anymore, and you don't live in Harlem anymore. You take your daughter, and you move. Philadelphia, Boston, I don't care. You just disappear, because if I see you again, if I even hear your name again, I won't be this generous." Bumpy turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "The $50,000, keep it. Use it to remember what betrayal costs." They left Thomas sitting at his table, crying over blood money. In the car, Illinois finally spoke. "That was mercy, boss." "No," Bumpy said, watching the sunrise start to paint the sky. "That was education. Thomas will spend every day for the rest of his life knowing he sold out family for money, that he put Billy's life in danger, that he nearly destroyed everything. That's worse than any beating I could give him." Illinois checked his watch. 5:12 in the morning. "What now?" Bumpy pulled out the file Jimmy had given him, opened it to a page near the back. It was a surveillance photo of 7 men sitting at a table in a restaurant. The syndicate. All of them smiling, toasting, celebrating their latest success. John Levy was in the center. "Now," Bumpy said, his voice cold and precise, "we make 7 men wish they'd never heard the name Billie Holiday." He pulled out a small black address book, flipped to a page marked with a red tab. The Matrix. It wasn't a person. It was a network. 47 people across New York City who owed Bumpy Johnson favors. Judges, cops, reporters, business owners, city officials, each one capable of applying pressure in different ways. Each one ready to move when Bumpy gave the word. He handed the book to Illinois. "Call everyone on the red tab. Tell them it's time to collect. And tell them we have 6 hours to dismantle an organization that's been murdering our people for 8 years. Illinois took the book, already reaching for the car phone. Bumpy looked at the photo one more time, studied each face, memorized them. Illinois, he said quietly. Yeah, boss. Tonight, 7 men fall. No blood, no evidence, no trail. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. And when it's done, the FBI is going to thank me. The sun was coming up over Harlem, somewhere in the city. John Levy was packing his bags, getting ready to disappear with $470,000 and a secret he thought would protect him forever. He had no idea that Bumpy Johnson had already dismantled his entire world. He had no idea that by sunset, he'd be begging for mercy from the one man in Harlem who didn't believe in second chances. He had no idea that the phone call at 2:17 in the morning had started a countdown he couldn't stop. 6 hours until John Levy's flight to Havana. 6 hours until the syndicate discovered what happens when you target Harlem's family. 6 hours until Bumpy Johnson proved that the most dangerous weapon in the world isn't a gun. It's a man who knows exactly how to destroy you without ever lifting a finger. By 6:30 in the morning, Bumpy Johnson was sitting in a coffee shop on Amsterdam Avenue, drinking black coffee and reading the morning paper like he had all the time in the world. Illinois stood outside, watching the street, waiting. At 6:45, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and Detective Marcus Morgan stepped out. Black, 42 years old, FBI for 15 years. He had a reputation that preceded him. Honest, incorruptible, the kind of cop who arrested his own partner when he found out the man was taking bribes. He was also the kind of cop who hated Bumpy Johnson on principle but respected him in practice. Morgan walked into the coffee shop, spotted Bumpy immediately, and sat down across from him without being invited. This better be good, Johnson. I got 20 agents ready to arrest you the second you sneeze wrong. Bumpy folded his newspaper, took a sip of coffee. How long has the Bureau been trying to bring down the East Coast money laundering network? Morgan's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. What do you know about that? I know you've been investigating 7 men for 2 years. I know they're washing money through 14 banks across 5 states. I know you've gotten close 3 times and had your cases fall apart because you can't get witnesses to testify. Bumpy pulled out the manila folder Jimmy had given him, slid it across the table. I know I can give you everything you need to put all 7 of them away for 20 years minimum. Morgan didn't touch the folder. What's the catch? No catch. You want them. I want them gone. Our interests align. Bumpy Johnson doesn't do anything without a reason. What's your angle? Bumpy leaned back, his voice dropping to something quiet and dangerous. One of those 7 men has been systematically destroying black artists for the better part of a decade, stealing their money, ruining their lives, killing them when they're worth more dead than alive. 23 people so far. Number 24 is someone I care about. Morgan's jaw tightened. He knew about the deaths. Everyone in law enforcement knew, but they'd never been able to prove anything. The accidents were too clean. The coincidences too convenient. You can prove this. Open the folder. Morgan opened it, started reading. His expression went from skeptical to focused to something that looked like controlled rage. Page after page of evidence. Financial records, insurance policies, witness statements. A complete map of an organization designed to exploit and murder. Where did you get this? Does it matter? It matters if I'm going to use it in court. It was obtained legally by private investigators working on behalf of concerned citizens. Every document is authentic. Every witness is willing to testify. You verify it. You'll find I'm telling the truth. Morgan closed the folder. What do you want in return? I want you to be outside Chez Maurice restaurant at 8 o'clock tonight. All 7 men will be there. I'm going to get them to incriminate themselves on tape. You come in, Make the arrests. Take the credit. The Bureau closes a 2-year investigation. You get promoted. Everyone wins. Except you want something. You always want something. Bumpy smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I wanted on record that I cooperated with federal authorities. I wanted in writing that Bumpy Johnson provided crucial evidence in bringing down a major criminal enterprise. So the next time your colleagues try to pin something on me, there's a paper trail showing I've been helpful. Morgan studied him for a long moment. You're using the FBI to clean up your own problems and make yourself look good in the process. I'm using the FBI to get justice for 23 dead artists and save the life of one living legend. What you choose to do with that is your business. And if I say no, then Billie Holiday dies. The syndicate continues operating. 23 families never get closure. And you spend another 2 years chasing shadows while more people die. Bumpy stood up, dropped money on the table for his coffee. 8 o'clock. Detective. Chez Maurice. You decide if justice matters more than pride. He walked out, leaving Morgan sitting there with a folder full of evidence and a choice to make. What Morgan didn't know, what nobody knew except Bumpy and Illinois, was that the decision had already been made for him. Bumpy had copies of that folder delivered to 3 newspapers and the district attorney's office. Time to arrive at 7 o'clock that evening. If Morgan didn't show up, if the FBI didn't act, the story would break anyway. Bumpy had just given Morgan the chance to be a hero instead of looking incompetent. That was how you hunted the hunters. You didn't run from them. You made them need you more than they wanted to catch you. Illinois drove them across town to a restaurant in Midtown. Chez Maurice, high-end. The kind of place where politicians made deals and criminals pretended to be legitimate businessmen. Bumpy had been here 100 times. He knew the owner. More importantly, he owned the owner. Pierre Maurice had been running the restaurant for 20 years. Good food, good wine, good reputation. But 5 years ago, Pierre had made some bad investments, lost a lot of money, started borrowing from the wrong people. Bumpy had paid off Pierre's debts, saved his business. And in return, Pierre owed him a favor. Today, Bumpy was calling it in. I need the restaurant tonight. 8 o'clock. Private party. Pierre nodded nervously. Of course, Mr. Johnson. How many guests? 7. Plus some unexpected visitors. I need your entire staff replaced for the evening. Replaced. Bumpy handed him a list of names. 23 names. These people will be your staff tonight. Waiters, busboys, bartenders, kitchen help. Every single person working in this restaurant will be someone I've personally selected. Pierre looked at the list, confused. Mr. Johnson, some of these people have no restaurant experience. They have the only experience that matters tonight. Trust me. What Pierre didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that every name on that list was connected to one of the 23 dead artists. Siblings, parents, widows, children, people who'd lost someone to the syndicate's greed. Bumpy had spent the morning tracking them down, explaining the situation, offering them a choice. They could stay home and let the FBI handle it, or they could be there tonight. Serve the men who'd destroyed their families. Look them in the eyes. Deliver their own quiet justice. 23 people had said yes. By 7:30 that evening, Chez Maurice had been transformed. The regular staff had been sent home with a paid week off. In their place, 23 people who'd spent years wondering why their loved ones had died so young. So suddenly, so conveniently, Marcus Webb's widow was working the coat check. Sarah Chen, whose brother had died in a car accident 6 months after signing with the syndicate, was behind the bar. Robert Jackson, whose daughter had overdosed 3 weeks before her first national tour, was in the kitchen preparing meals he'd been told exactly how to make. Each of them had been briefed. Each of them knew their role. And each of them understood that tonight wasn't about violence. It was about making 7 men feel something they'd never allowed their victims to feel. Fear. At 7:55, John Levy walked into Chez Maurice wearing an expensive suit and a confident smile. He thought he was meeting Bumpy Johnson to negotiate, to reach some kind of understanding. Maybe pay a fine. Maybe make a deal. He had no idea he was walking into his own funeral. The hostess, a woman whose son had been one of the syndicate's early victims, greeted Levy with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Levy. Mr. Johnson is expecting you." "Right this way." She led him to a private dining room in the back. Elegant, quiet. A single table set for 8. Bumpy was already there, sitting at the head of the table, a glass of wine in his hand. "John, thank you for coming." Levy sat down, trying to read the room. Something felt off, but he couldn't quite place it. "Bumpy, I appreciate the invitation. I think we can work something out regarding Miss Holiday." "We're not here to negotiate. John, we're here to eat." A waiter appeared. Older man, trembling slightly as he placed a menu in front of Levy. "Our chef has prepared something special tonight," the waiter said, his voice carefully controlled. "The first course is seared duck breast with cherry reduction, the same dish that John Davis ordered the night before he died." Levy's face went pale. John Davis, a trumpet player who died 2 years ago in a hotel fire. One of the syndicate's victims. I don't understand what you will," Bumpy said calmly. The waiter disappeared. Returned 5 minutes later with the first course. Set it down in front of Levy with hands that shook with barely controlled emotion. Levy stared at the plate. "Who are you?" "I'm John Davis's father. He called me the night he died. Told me he was scared. Said his manager was threatening him. I told him he was being paranoid." The old man's voice cracked. "I never got to tell him I was sorry." He walked away before Levy could respond. Levy pushed back from the table, started to stand. "I'm not staying for this." The door opened. 6 more men walked in. The rest of the syndicate. Richard Hall, Martin Cross, Samuel Weinstein, David Park, Anthony Ricci, Frank O'Brien. They looked at Levy, confused. Looked at Bumpy, suspicious. "What is this?" Hall demanded. "Dinner," Bumpy said simply. "Sit down. All of you." One by one. They sat, not because they wanted to, but because something in Bumpy's voice made it clear that walking out wasn't an option. The restaurant's doors locked with a soft click. "Gentlemen," Bumpy said, standing up, "welcome to your last supper." Before anyone could respond, a projector screen descended from the ceiling. An image appeared, a photograph of 7 men at a table. The same 7 men now sitting in this room. The photo was dated 3 weeks earlier. "You're probably wondering how I got this," Bumpy continued. "You're probably wondering what I know. Let me save you the suspense." He clicked a remote. The screen changed. Financial records, bank statements, money flowing from artist accounts into offshore holdings. "I know about the 14 banks. I know about the insurance policies. I know about the 23 people you've murdered over the past 8 years. Click. Another image. Surveillance photos of each man entering various locations, meeting with suspicious figures, exchanging envelopes. "I know where you bank. I know where you live. I know where your children go to school." The room went silent. Cold. "More importantly," Bumpy said, his voice dropping to something deadly quiet, "the FBI knows. They're outside right now with 47 pages of federal charges, wire fraud, money laundering, insurance fraud, racketeering, and murder. Martin Cross jumped to his feet. "You're bluffing." The screen changed again. This time it showed a live feed. The street outside. 3 FBI vehicles. Agents in position. Waiting. "Sit down." "Martin." He sat. Samuel Weinstein's voice was shaking. "You set us up." "No, Samuel. You set yourselves up. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Frank O'Brien looked around the table, his face twisted with rage. "One of you talked. Someone here is working with him." "No. Frank, nobody here worked with me." Bumpy smiled. "But that's the beauty of this, isn't it? Now you're all wondering, who betrayed us, who's been feeding Bumpy information, who's the rat?" He let that sink in, watched as the 7 men started looking at each other. Suspicion, doubt, fear. "I don't need a rat," Bumpy continued. "You're going to destroy each other all on your own. That's what happens when there's no honor among thieves, when there's no trust, when everyone's just out for themselves." David Park stood up. "I'm leaving." "No, you're not. You can't keep us here." "I'm not keeping you here. You're free to walk out that door anytime you want. But the second you do, the FBI arrests you, and you spend the next 20 years in federal prison wondering which one of your friends testified against you to get a lighter sentence." Park sat back down. Anthony Ricci, who'd been quiet until now, finally spoke. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something. For 8 years, you've been preying on people you thought were powerless. Black artists who had no protection, no leverage, no way to fight back." Bumpy walked slowly around the table. "You were wrong. They had me." He stopped behind Livy's chair. "And now I'm going to give you the same choice you gave them. You can face the consequences of your actions, or you can run. But either way, you're finished." The door opened. Detective Morgan walked in, 3 FBI agents behind him. "Bumpy Johnson," Morgan said, his voice official, professional. "Thank you for your cooperation. We'll take it from here." But Bumpy wasn't done. "Before you arrest them, Detective, I think you should know something. One of these 7 men has been working with me for the past 8 months, providing evidence, recording conversations, building the case against the others." The room exploded. All 7 men started yelling at once, accusations flying, fingers pointing. It's Hall, he's always been weak. O'Brien was asking too many questions. Weinstein's been nervous for months. Bumpy let them tear each other apart for 30 seconds. Then he raised his hand. Silence. "You want to know who it was?" He pulled out a small recording device, pressed play. A voice came through the speaker, Martin Cross's voice. "We need to be more careful. Davis knew too much. We should have handled it differently." Another voice, Samuel Weinstein. "The insurance company is asking questions. We need to space out the incidents more." A third voice, Anthony Ricci. "If anyone finds out about the offshore accounts, we're all going to prison." 247 recordings. Conversations between the syndicate members over 8 months. Every incriminating word, every admission of guilt, every piece of evidence the FBI needed. And then Bumpy revealed the twist that would break them completely. The person who recorded all of this isn't in this room. He's been gone for 3 weeks, living in Costa Rica under FBI protection. His name is Michael Torres. Your accountant, the man who handled all your money, the man who knew where every dollar went and every body was buried. John Livy's face went from pale to gray. Michael Torres, the one man they'd all trusted implicitly, the one man who had access to everything. "Michael approached me 6 months ago," Bumpy continued. "Guilty conscience, wanted out, wanted to make things right. I gave him a choice. Help me bring you down, or go down with you. He made the smart choice. It wasn't entirely true. Michael Torres existed, and he had been their accountant. But he hadn't approached Bumpy. Bumpy had approached him, offered him immunity and a new life in exchange for total cooperation. The FBI didn't need to know that detail. So you see, gentlemen, I didn't need a rat at this table. I had one in your back office, recording every phone call, copying every document, building a case so airtight that even your expensive lawyers can't save you. The 7 men looked at each other, the last remnants of trust dissolving into nothing. Detective Morgan stepped forward. Bumpy's right. We have everything. 2 years of evidence, 247 recorded conversations, 14 banks ready to testify about your money laundering, 23 families ready to testify about your fraud. He pulled out a piece of paper. Here's what's going to happen. We're offering a deal. One time only. Anyone who signs a full confession, agrees to testify against the organization you were working for, and provides information about the people above you in the chain, gets 15 years instead of life. What organization? Richard Hall asked, his voice hollow. You think you 7 were running this alone? Morgan laughed. You're small fish. We want the sharks. The people who bankrolled this operation. The people who taught you how to do it. You give us names, locations, evidence, and you get a deal. You stay silent. You die in prison. The room went silent, the kind of silence that comes right before everything falls apart. Frank O'Brien was the first to break. I want to talk to my lawyer. Me too, David Park added quickly. One by one, 5 of them stood up, choosing prison, choosing to take their chances with the legal system rather than betray whoever was above them in the organization. That left 2, Martin Cross and Samuel Weinstein. They looked at each other, then at the confession papers Morgan was holding. We talk, Cross said finally. We tell you everything, but we want protection, new identities, witness protection. Done, Morgan said. Cross and Weinstein signed, their hands shaking, their faces showing they understood they'd just condemned themselves to a different kind of prison. Forever looking over their shoulders, forever wondering when the people they'd betrayed would find them. John Levy just sat there, frozen, unable to process what was happening. Bumpy leaned down next to his ear. You don't get to choose, John. You have a different debt to pay. Morgan and his agents led the 5 silent men out in handcuffs, led Cross and Weinstein out separately, and then it was just Bumpy, Illinois, and John Levy in the private dining room. Levy finally found his voice. What happens to me? Bumpy pulled out his phone, dialed a number, put it on speaker. A voice answered on the second ring. Deep, accented, Italian. Bumpy, I was expecting your call. Don Marchetti, I just cleaned up 7 pieces of garbage that were operating in your territory without permission. Stealing money, killing people, making noise that was going to bring federal attention so it's your way. I appreciate that. In return, I need something. Name it. John Levy. He's been running debts with your associates, 200,000 with Sal Tortino's books. I need those debts forgiven. Silence on the other end. Then, why would I do that? Because Levy is going to pay back every dollar he stole from Billie Holiday, 470,000. And after he does that, he's going to leave New York and never come back. But if Sal's people are chasing him, that complicates things. You're asking me to forgive 200,000 in gambling debts. I'm asking you to consider it an investment. Levy walks away clean from your books. You don't have to chase him, don't have to collect. He just disappears. In exchange, you owe me a favor. One favor. to be collected when I need it. Another long silence. Then Don Marchetti laughed. You're a clever bastard, Bumpy. Fine. Levy's debts are cleared. And I owe you one. But when you call in that favor, it better be worth it. It will be. Bumpy hung up. Levy was staring at him. Comprehension finally dawning. You just made a deal with the mafia. For me? No, John. I made a deal that keeps you alive long enough to pay back what you owe. The mafia was just a piece on the board. Same as the FBI. Same as your partners. Same as you. He stood up, straightening his jacket. You have 72 hours to liquidate your assets and deliver $470,000 to my lawyer. Every penny you stole from Billie Holiday. You do that. You get to live. You get to leave. You get to start over somewhere else. And if I don't, Illinois stepped forward, speaking for the first time in hours. Then we take you to meet 23 families and let them decide your punishment. Levy fainted. Illinois caught him before he hit the floor, dumped him into a chair. Bumpy checked his watch. 10:23. The whole thing had taken less than 3 hours. 7 men arrested. 2 men turned. 1 man completely destroyed without a single punch thrown. Get him in the car, Bumpy said. We have one more stop to make. Illinois lifted Levy's unconscious body, carried him out through the kitchen, past the 23 people who'd served their small piece of justice, past Marcus Webb's widow, who spat on the ground as Levy was carried past Sarah Chen, who whispered, "For my brother," past Robert Jackson, who just nodded. They loaded Levy into the trunk, not because they needed to hide him, but because Bumpy wanted him to wake up in darkness, wanted him to feel, for just a few minutes, what it was like to be helpless, trapped, powerless. The car drove through Harlem as midnight approached. Illinois was driving. Bumpy was in the back seat, making phone calls, checking pieces, making sure everything was in place. At 12:15, Levy woke up, started screaming, pounding on the trunk. Illinois pulled over, opened the trunk. Levy scrambled out, gasping for air, wild-eyed. Where are we? What are you doing? We're taking you somewhere, Bumpy said calmly. Somewhere you need to be. Where? To meet the 23 people you killed. Levy's face went white. They're dead. You can't, they're dead. Bumpy smiled. It was the coldest smile Illinois had ever seen. Not all of them. The Apollo Theater had been dark for 3 weeks. Renovations, the sign said. But that wasn't the real reason. Illinois pulled the car up to the side entrance. 1:17 in the morning. Empty streets. Silent. Bumpy opened the trunk. John Levy looked up, face streaked with tears. Please don't kill me. Get out. They walked through the side door into darkness. Then the lights came on. Just the stage lights. Sitting in the first 10 rows were 89 people. 23 families. Parents, siblings, widows, children, all staring at John Levy. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just looked at him. Levy's knees buckled. Illinois held him up. Look at them, Bumpy said quietly. Bumpy walked Levy down the aisle, forcing him to meet every face. An elderly woman whose son died at 28. A young couple whose daughter overdosed at 23. A teenage boy whose father died 3 days after trying to leave his contract. When they reached the front, Bumpy turned Levy around. Kneel. Levy dropped to his knees. You're going to apologize. To each one. By name. For 47 minutes, John Levy confessed. He spoke the names of the dead, admitted how he stole, how he arranged their accidents, how he collected insurance. The audience never spoke, never yelled, just sat there, witnessing. By the time he finished, Levy was destroyed. Not physically. Bumpy never touched him. But mentally, spiritually, completely broken. The 89 people stood as one, still silent, and walked out, leaving Levy alone with his guilt. Illinois drove Levy to Grand Central Terminal, not the airport. The terminal was where his story would end. Dawn was breaking. Early commuters filtered in. "Why didn't you kill me?" Levy's voice was hoarse. Bumpy watched the sunrise. Death is mercy. An ending. You don't deserve that. Then what? You live with what you've done. Every morning. You'll see those faces. Every night. You'll hear those names. That's your punishment. Memory. Bumpy handed him an envelope. Train ticket to Los Angeles. One way. $470,000 goes to Billy by noon. Everything you stole. Gone. What am I supposed to do? Survive. Suffer. Remember. Bumpy opened the door. But if I ever hear your name again, those 89 people won't be the last faces you see. Levy got out, holding the envelope with shaking hands. I'm sorry. Tell that to the families, every day for the rest of your life. Don't tell it to me. By 8 in the morning, Bumpy knocked on Billy's door. She answered, eyes red but alive. He handed her a briefcase. She opened it. $470,000. How? Because one of the 7 had been working for me from the beginning. Uncle Bumpy, don't say anything, just sing. She did. Right there. No accompaniment. Billie Holiday sang, God Bless the Child. For the first time in 40 years, Bumpy Johnson cried. Within 3 days, 47 artists terminated exploitative contracts across New York. Managers became honest. Club owners paid fair wages. Nobody said Bumpy's name. Everyone understood. Bumpy sent one message to WLIB radio. To anyone who preys on Harlem's artists, you won't die. You'll wish you could. Harlem protects its own. Detective Morgan heard it, shook his head, almost smiled. For the first time, he understood justice didn't always need a courtroom. 14 months later, Billie Holiday died, July 17, 1959, 44 years old. Her funeral filled St. Paul the Apostle Church. Thousands attended. Bumpy stood across the street. Boss, why aren't you going in? Illinois asked. Because I promised her 17 years ago. Her name would never be connected to mine. She was a singer. I'm a criminal. She deserves to be remembered for her voice, not for needing me to survive. That night, Illinois brought Bumpy a drink. You gave her justice. Bumpy shook his head. Justice isn't revenge. It's making people believe protection exists, that the powerful can't prey on the vulnerable without consequences. He walked to the window, looked out at Harlem. Power isn't making people fear you. Power is making 23 families believe in justice when the law failed them. Making one woman sing free. Making a whole city understand someone has their back. That's why you're a legend. Boss? No. I'm a legend because I understood something most never learn. Bumpy's voice was quiet. The greatest power isn't violence. It's giving people hope when they have none left. In Harlem, where hope was rare, Bumpy Johnson had become proof that even in darkness, someone was watching, someone was protecting. That was the real story. The promise that Harlem would never let its own be destroyed. And as long as Bumpy Johnson lived, that promise would be kept. Power isn't making people fear you. Power is making 23 families believe in justice. That's why Harlem exists. That's why Bumpy Johnson is a legend.